What's going on, creators? Yeah, I just want to get on here and bring everybody back to now. Appreciate y'all being here and vibing with me for a bit. Yeah, today I'd like to just continue the conversation on mental diets and hopefully add something positive to your mental diet for today. I've got a bunch of stuff to talk about, one of which has to do with putting your attention on the life that you desire to experience and not just living vicariously through archetypes, through culture and through screens and through media narratives and all that kind of stuff. It's easy to get swept away in that collective consciousness and start just reacting to it, just thinking the same things that everybody else around you's thinking. That's plugged into that shit. But once you kind of let that go, because so much of it has to do with illusions and illusions of like injustices and things to battle and resist and fight against, but the more that you start to realize that creation consciousness is governed by law and by an order to things, it makes things a lot less reactive, and so, part of that, has to do with like, me personally, I would feel like, people are getting like a raw deal or like getting fucked over on different things, getting ripped off. And, then all of a sudden the idea of injustice happening all around starts, permeating, your being, and it starts spinning you down these rabbit holes of like looking at others, as being victims of like, outer events, it's just like, but the more that you realize people are experiencing a direct result of their own consciousness, it makes it a lot easier to, I wouldn't say not care if people drift into these states unconsciously and they're just sitting there suffering and everything else. Obviously if you drifted into a state that you were unaware and, you don't want to be there, it's one thing. It's another, if people are just reaping what their soul needs at the time, getting out of this idea that things aren't happening the way they should be, like everybody should be exactly the same, we're all cut from the same mold, instead of like, physically just taking your own, what you can see in your own space and nature and everything else. And there's definitely like hierarchies of things, it's like having chickens, to believe that every chicken is exactly the same and thinks exactly the same. And, it's, nobody's good at anything, nobody's bad at anything, everybody, no one's smarter or dumber, and we're all just exactly the same. And it's like, well, maybe on some level, we all have like a perfect like hodgepodge of things, that nobody's better than another, because we're all reflecting consciousness anyway. And so like having an idea of being superior is one thing, but it's another to disregard the obvious levels that exist. It's like you have somebody that's like day one playing the guitar, for example, versus where somebody's at 20 years into playing discipline, like every day they're practicing. The obvious skill level and abilities is obviously there's going to be a difference, but not to then have like the mental narratives then on top of it. That's more of the issue, is like the unconscious narratives. Really, it's one thing to have the conscious narratives, things that you actually believe and you feel strongly about. That's one thing, and if those beliefs serve you in your state of consciousness, more power to you. It's more about these limiting beliefs and assumptions from the old slave mindset that keep you in a little box, that keep your dreams and aspirations away from you. It's like then all of a sudden you start getting envious and you start getting jealous, and then you're just like, well, then you start making up stories of why that person has something and you don't have it. That's the problem. The problem is the mental stories and narratives, but once you realize you can be, do, or have anything it's done unto you by what you have in consciousness, well, then it becomes, well, why do I keep giving myself the worst things then? Why do I keep focusing on what I don't desire? Why do I keep putting my attention on the world and all the injustices and creating even more injustices by putting your attention into this shit? It for every like news story of some injustice, there's like probably 99 other stories of justice, that just doesn't get put into your face, because for some reason, people manifest that, they want to see the injustices for some reason, because so many people can become, drifting into the old slave mind, that's what that mindset wants to manifest. Chaos, disorder, disharmony, drama, anger, all of these states of separation is what the old slave mind loves to create. But it's a love that's unconscious, because there's only one power. So it's like you're using the only power that exists, the only energy, which is God, to create disharmony, drama, more and more separateness, and doubling down on that over and over again, where you can just as easily let that programming go by in the same time that you have those beliefs and assumptions bubble to the surface of your consciousness. You can start to then Bobby, that was my cat. Then you can like take them to God and ask, what's a better way to look at that? How does the spirit interpret that? Ask, believe, and receive. You'll get an answer. Either you start maybe getting some programming that starts coming up to your consciousness of things that are bricks in this kind of structure of thought, of why you believe what you believe. It's like, oh, you believe in scarcity. What are you doing, Bobby? Leave the dog alone. But like, you have these beliefs of scarcity. Well, then all of a sudden you have, well, why do I believe that? 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 And do 4 or 5 times of asking why, before eventually, you start to come to a new understanding that is like, where did that come from? And the more that you do that, the more that you realize that you're connected to an intelligence that's higher than what your lower slave mind, likes to think that all there is. I don't know why my cat is like bothering my dog, but it's very distracting. Hopefully it's not distracting for who's ever listening. It might not even be picking it up on the microphone. You see my dog in the background trying to get away from Bobby, the needy cat. But like, yeah, it gets to be more and more so as you are just kind of realizing that, hey, today and the here and now is where all the action is. This is where life is. The things that keep you away from enjoying that more and more so, a lot of times are these desires that, are constantly like saying, hey, this is what you believe you are, which is not actually reflective of who you really are in Christ. And by taking a quick shift in thought, it's almost like being hungry, like looking at these thoughts of desire, because all these desires are, in a lot of ways, is like, I feel scarce, I feel scarce in that area. Well, part of that is not real, because you can be, do, and have anything. So it's like, why do you feel scarce when you can have anything? Well, because my parents told me that life is hard and you got to struggle or society told me that money is scarce and it's hard to make and you got to put in the time and you got to sacrifice and you got to earn all this different shit. When you start to realize though that these states of consciousness are being done to you, well then it's like, well, you don't have to do it. A way will be made known to you in the here and now, right now. It's not coming tomorrow. It's not, well, in a week from now this will happen. It's like, the more that you realize time is an illusion, the more that you open yourself up to being able to experience these things in consciousness. There's more divine states of consciousness right here and right now. And start seeing the unity, start seeing the connectedness, start seeing how the only thing that is real is God, and there's only one power being used from 2 different perspectives, and so you can choose scarcity and these illusions of separation that have a corresponding result of suffering, because you're detaching yourself away from God, even though you can't even do that, but you can believe you can do that. It's like shutting a curtain and then believing that the sun is gone. It's like, oh, I shut the curtain, I don't see the light, and then you start freaking out, telling yourself stories about like how it disappeared and that you're all powerful because you made the sun disappear. But all you have to do is reopen the curtain and it's, it didn't go anywhere. It's like the same with like this energy. It's ever present. It's always going. It's you can close the curtain and tell yourself a story of why you believe it's not. but that doesn't mean that's real. It's just an illusion you're telling yourself. And so many times these narratives that we're telling ourselves unconsciously, because we don't take the time to kind of bring it to awareness, we're just like, oh, it's like, you feel like a certain way, you feel some fear or something, and then there's just like a corresponding like little story that goes along with it, or vice versa. You can tell yourself a little story and then feel the fear because you believe it. But then you can just as easily start telling yourself a different story, because part of what makes you afraid is you drifting away from like realizing that there's only consciousness externalizing through form. It's God being externalized in the physical, that you can, I don't know how to describe it in a way that makes sense, other than you can start doing it for yourself and seeing with your own eyes, and you're experiencing with your own being that this is the reality of the situation. And you can start being led down this path and start realizing, people have realized this for hundreds of years, that thoughts become things type thing. But like the problem that most people get into, or I got into at least, with like kind of pursuing that, is then realizing that then the fear starts to manifest more so than the desirable shit, mainly because in the old mindset it's just littered with thoughts of fear and scraps of fear and anxieties and worries and what ifs and worst case scenarios, and what if this happens, what if that happens, what if that person does this, what if that it's like, it's getting out of all of those types of thoughts, and realizing that you can be, do, and have anything, that God's the one that does it to you and gives it to you, and it's by your faith. So it's like you are already reaping exactly what you believe in consciousness. And whether you want to hear that or not, it is empowering to start taking responsibility for your own state of mind, because it has a direct correlation, reflection to how you're experiencing life. And so you're either being a embodiment of hell, or you're being an embodiment of heaven and divine things, because that's your actual, that's who you actually are. You're created by God, and God only creates perfect things, and so in that perfection, it's realizing the perfection that's already inherent. The slave mind will come in and tell you why you're a sinner and all of you're not good enough, and like, you should be guilty and shame ridden, filled with fear, and how you're just some scum. It's like, you listen to the world, they'll tell you you're fucking scum on some random shit. And just let all that fucking nonsense go, because it's like letting Santa Claus go. It's like, oh, it actually doesn't matter that I don't hold these beliefs anymore. And like, the more you let those things go, the more that you're able to just be, and be, more in alignment with who you actually are in Christ. Less that you have these unconscious limiting beliefs and fairy tales running around in your mind, and you get to kind of observe what you're already saying. Maybe your problem is like with your spouse or something, your wife or your husband, and it's like, like a lot of men, have a lot of issues, that go unsaid, of like, they're not doing, they're not creating, they're not providing, they're not getting sex regularly. It's like, it's all this fucking drama, a lot of guys are dealing with, mainly through their own consciousness, and it's something you have to start really taking ownership of. Stop blaming your wife, for your problems, and look at your own self and realize your wife is reflecting your relationship with God, and so the more that you make the change within your own consciousness, the more that will reflect as well. There's nothing separate going on. It's like, the old slave mind likes to see, oh, well, this is a marker, and has a little story with this particular brand of marker. It's like, oh, well, this is a guitar pick, and this is a thin one, and there's like all of this little narrative and story about it. Like, I notice that a lot more with women. They'll take some material item and have like a little cute story about it, and it's like, oh, well, this was fancy and it made me feel a certain way, and it's like a little treasure, a little piece of treasure, and these are, but it's that intention and that mental activity that does make it a treasure, on some level. But it's not about the making the outer thing an idol, but realizing that it's not a bunch of separate things. It's not a bunch of separate guitar picks. Everything has its own little energy with it. But it's all a symbol. It's all a word that can be spiritually discerned as something that was created and serves a function in a divine way. Even something as simple as a guitar pick, well, to somebody who maybe is like, wants something from me or something, it's like, oh, well, Mike, he touched that guitar pick and there's some energy on it and I just want it for some reason. It's like these mental stories. Most of creation, when you really stop and think about it, in business and religious circles, spiritual things, everything else, it's just people in a room talking. It's like, what's the difference between heaven and hell for a lot of people? It's like you're both in a space with others, supposed others, but it's like, even with the others, it's all like God will take the mask off at the end, and it's like it was a spirit wearing a mask the whole time. And that's part of your new identity, is connecting more with who you actually are in consciousness, which is, I guess, a spirit, consciousness, that I am presence, that's experiencing like the physical world, the relative world, and not to sit there and judge and condemn the relative world, which so much of the old mindset wants to do. It wants to destroy it and build it back better. And it's not just the elites that are guilty of doing that. It's most people. It's reflective of the collective consciousness manifests that kind of person to fulfill that. It's like it's not appreciating what you already have. I mean, it's like, I think it was Family Guy, South Park, something like that. I think it was Mayor West. I think it was Family Guy, but they're like, Peter and all them got sick of like politics and the government, and so they had like a revolution. And at the end, they're like, okay, well, we need somebody to take care of the police and keep everybody safe, and basically they tore the government down. And then Mayor West was like, well, I have experience in being a mayor. I could run this new government. And he basically just created the same government they already had. And, well, we'll come up with a system of just collecting incremental amounts of money from each one of us off of our business transactions to be able to pay for it. And they just created the exact same thing they already had, which, it's like, look around. What more do you want? It's like, oh, you got a grocery store. You don't got to hunt and fish and fucking track down something to eat. You got running water, electricity, and internet connection, clothes on your back. It's like, so many of these people, it's like, oh, we got to tear it down because humans are such the scourge of the earth, and, the humans are the virus. It's like, and we'll build it back to be exactly the same. Yeah, this is a retarded way of thinking, but, it is part of creation. It's serving a function. It's, again, part of those levels where you can like look at it so you can define yourself as part of the relative world, as far as I'm concerned, where it's just like, you got to see what you're not, and you're defining yourself relative to that position. So it's one way to define who you are in Christ, by going, well, I'm not scarcity minded and wanting to enslave others, and that using it as like a contrast. It's like, I'm not sure no, I'm not fear, because that doesn't feel who I am, and so using the relative world as contrast on some level, but I think I'm gonna bounce. I got a bunch of little errands and shit to run. I got to take care of the chickens and everything today. It's like, hopefully have a little fire going. I got a window that's broken in my living room. I got a double paned window, and it's been like that for a year or two. And I finally think I got it figured out how to repair it. I mean, kind of just make it look like it's not, trashy or whatever, because it's broke. But it's a big window, and it'll be kind of an ordeal to replace it. And so, I'm just going to try to make something work. And I think it'll be a interesting thing when it's done. But trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to bring to you guys, just to think about, put on for the time being, and see if it resonates with you. It's like the more I'm kind of like doing this myself, the more I see it to be not only like reality, but it's happening faster and faster in terms of like having a thought and seeing an instantaneous manifestation through others, through the environment, through situations, circumstances, events, chance utterances, a song on the radio, whatever. This is like unlimited ways for these messages to reach you, but I just wanted to also see, I know with like part of like the Neville Goddard law of assumption type of imagining and being and stuff, like, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with what you're saying, but I've found like a stumbling block kind of to be constantly trying to imagine a different situation and getting hung up in the imaginal kind of world, which kind of then starts getting you into future projection and getting you away from the present moment. And I feel like a little bit of resistance in that. And biblically, it talks about like how we can't imagine the things that God has in store for us, for the people that love God, and so not to say you don't imagine, don't and that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is be open to have a new vision, that will be taught to you through your, maybe today, maybe today's a good day for that. So now's the time to do it. So it's like be open to letting God put a new dream in your soul, in your mind, of like a future, because you might still be thinking with a slave mind, trying to take shit and make shit good, where it's just like, just stop playing with shit. That's not who you are, so be open to just let some of your imaginings go, because you still might be thinking very small, very limiting in what's possible. Be open to something new, something even better, even more fucking unbelievable on some level, where it's just like, I can't believe how amazing that is, because even like when things manifest, for me at least, getting out of like the how it's going to happen, but more just embodying like, oh, I'm already in heaven right now. God's in control of everything. Nothing's random. Everything's happening perfectly, even though I might not understand it. It's okay, things work out and it all makes sense as I connect the dots looking backwards type thing. But like, just be open to having a bigger dream, because having limited dreams, it's like, oh, I just want to get like a, say you're, and this is a boat I've been in, where it's like, oh, my vehicle broke and I need a new vehicle. I don't have any credit because like, fuck these bankers, and like, whatever. But like, just having a limited, like, oh, what's possible of like, oh, I just want like something that runs, versus, oh, like a Ferrari or something. It's like, don't just limit yourself to a small thing because you believe that's what you deserve or what is possible to get. Any of those types of things, let that shit go, because those are still examples of limiting beliefs and assumptions. So until the next now, I'm going to bounce. So, thanks everybody for liking, sharing, subscribing, all the social networking things. I appreciate your spiritual support and your financial support. And other than that, God bless.